Pro-Palestinian protesters turned up outside a sold-out Douglas Murray event recently in London to get it cancelled. They used threats and intimidation to get their way. In the end, it had to be moved elsewhere.
Israel is a terrorist state.
Douglas Murray is nothing but a coward. He is nothing but a right-winger who is using his platform to fundraise for the ideas who are nothing but baby killers, who are nothing but genocide enablers, who are nothing but bombers, who are nothing but terrorists. Today he's using this platform and he's using these theatres that we're standing outside today. He booked, so shame on this theatre. Shame on you! Shame on you!
What has happened to this country? And let's face it, it is only going to get worse. This is Douglas Murray explaining exactly what happened.
Well, the event was meant to go ahead at the Apollo Theatre on Shaftesbury Avenue. It was sold out, and it was, as you say, to raise funds for students at an Israeli university, many of whom have been called up in wartime, and their education has been completely disrupted. And so, yes, it was a conversation that I was being interviewed by the actress Louisa Klein. And it was going to be a warm and happy event. And a group of staff at the theatre said apparently they felt unsafe about the event. Then something very sinister occurred. The CEO of NYMAX, who is herself Jewish, started to get scared, it seems. She called in staff from another theatre, and one of her own staff leaked the emails of the people who were going to work as ushers and so on the evening. And then they themselves dropped out from fear.
Seems everyone is working against this country to topple it. Even the police are standing by, allowing these extremists to get their way. Whether because they agree with them or are too terrified to stand up to them, who knows? The police should have protected that event. They would have had it been the other way around. The problem is we have sections of the Muslim community who want to impose their beliefs on us. On top of that, we have a government and authorities that are too scared to stand up to them. And on top of that, we have large sections of left-wingers who are defending this because the Islamists are useful in helping them destroy Britain as we know it. And those left-wingers are already in power in many institutions. And come this time next year, they will be in government. It is a recipe for disaster. I'm sick of having Palestine shoved down my throat all the time. The leftists say we are only taking in Ukrainian refugees because they are white Christians. Even though that is not true, how is it any different to Muslims only supporting Palestine so vociferously because it is fellow Muslims under siege from Israel? I watched BBC Question Time last week, a popular British show where the audience asks politicians questions. All the questions asked by the audience were on domestic British issues, because if anybody hadn't noticed, we are in Britain. First-generation immigrant Konstantin Kisin was on the panel answering a question at the end where he said he is sick of people saying Britain is a horrible place to live because it's a great place to live. As he said it, a Muslim woman in the audience started relentlessly screaming at him, "Shame on you," over and over. Says nothing all show on British issues, but then soon pipes up over Palestine when the question wasn't even about that. Why wasn't she told to shut up because the question wasn't about Palestine, and then removed from the studio when she kept screaming over the top of everyone? Again, shoving it down our necks. The fact is, we need to stop importing any more people now from these countries that do not share our values and beliefs. It is not in Britain's interests. And that is what counts. It's our country, and we should be deciding who comes here. Unfortunately, that won't happen. I'll leave you with Douglas Murray putting it perfectly.
Saturday after Saturday, people parade through the streets of London, calling for jihad, praising Hamas, praising terrorists, and clambering over and defiling our sacred war monuments? Why do they get to do that every Saturday, but I can't speak in a theatre on Shaftesbury Avenue to a packed theatre mainly of Jews? Why is it that if you call for violence against Jews day after day on the streets of London, that's A-OK with the Metropolitan Police? But if Jews want to congregate in central London, apparently it's not okay, and we'll have to retreat to another venue. I'm not a victim here, and I'm not claiming any victimhood. I don't believe in that. I don't care. I'm not going to shut up. I'll continue speaking. This is my country. London is my city, and I expect to be able to do what I want in my city. But why is it that we have Hamas supporters and all these others who defile our monuments, defile our country, hate our countries, literally spit on our country week after week, but you're not allowed to show solidarity with the Jews or with Israel? It's a despicable situation, and it's come about because of a generational cowardice by politicians of all parties and by the Metropolitan Police and others. I think it's appalling, because I know one thing for sure, Julia. The people who hate the Israelis, the people who hate the Jews, the people who we're watching at the moment marching through central London, they hate Britain as much as they hate Israel. It's just that Britain is first. We're all going to be next. So I'd say stand up in whichever way you can. And if you're an usher in a theatre, well, you know, do your darn job. It's what you're employed for. But the idea that we have to keep giving in, and that this society, of all societies, Julia, we used to be a resilient society in Britain. The country we were brought up in, our parents' generation, our grandparents' generation, were resilient people. We don't have to show that much resilience these days. We just need to show a bit of backbone. Where is it, Britain? Where have you gone? Oh, they're afraid of Muslims. They're afraid of Muslim extremists. They're afraid of the Muslims taking to the streets and vastly outnumbering the police, which has happened on occasion after occasion. That's what happens.
Then shouldn't moderate Muslims who didn't want to come and live in this country or were born in this country, who don't share those values, and I like to think the majority don't, shouldn't we all be in the streets and say, that's it, we will not put up with this anymore?
Well, I'm afraid what you call the moderate Muslims are notable by their absence, certainly notable in condemning their co-religionists when they call for jihad and much more. So I don't have any particular faith in that particular corner of society. But I do wonder, as I say, what has happened to everybody else. Last week, we had a Conservative MP stepping down because he said there are too many threats to his life and he just doesn't feel safe being in politics. And all these nincompoops in the Conservative Party and the other parties sort of said, oh, that's sad that that's happened. No, it's not sad. It's an outrage. It's an absolute outrage. And the police, I mean, last night in London, outside the theatre I was meant to speak at, a group of Islamists paraded up and down the streets screaming through megaphones abuse at me. I don't care, but I think the Metropolitan Police ought to care. You know, and also let's never forget, Julia, we are all being played in Britain. We are all being played. People like the ones you're watching at the moment, they wouldn't reciprocate and give us our rights to freedom of speech if they had the upper hand. Not a bit of it. These people would subjugate everybody. But they're trying everything they can now. They're pushing, as people like them always do. And I would like to see Britain to push back. I think it's high time we made it clear that we're not going to be pushed around endlessly. You know what? We have holy places as well. One of them is our war memorials, which are trampled upon week after week. You know what? I've heard enough of Islam's holy places. I've heard enough of Islam's feelings and the sensitive feelings of Muslims that dictate which films can be seen and which books can be written. Well, you know what? We're not very sensitive. I'm not very sensitive. But actually, I do have feelings as well. And my society has feelings. And we don't like trampled